I just think the business is pretty good.
Good afternoon. This Thursday, August 1st, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Education, Women's and Community Schools is now ordered. First item of business is 114.25, pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is 115.25, roll call attendance. Take the roll.
Mr. Neal,
Here.
Dr. Weaver,
Here.
Mr. Cox,
Present.
Ms. Mitchell, present. Ms. May, present. Ms. Hines, present, and President Gray.
Present.
Okay, so we're here.
The next item on the agenda is 116.25, which is adjournment to closed session. We're going to closed session pursuant to 8A of the Open Meetings Act. Do I have a motion?
Motion to go into a closed session.
Do I have support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Closed session.
Mr. President, I make a motion to move this closed session back into open session.
Do I have support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're back in open session. Next item on the agenda is 118.25, citizens comment on agenda items. Do you have any citizens that are comment on agenda items? Okay. Moving on to the next item, we have 119.25, which is board workshop presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you to everybody for coming as well. Our team is going to take you through a brief presentation today, which will summarize all of the surveys, community engagement meetings, and also some recommendations we have for cost reductions. Okay, so if you just take a minute and read the goal of the meeting. So it keeps us all on the same page as we work through the next hour. And all the information, if you give me a quick just thumbs up or nod, you're good. Okay, so first we're going to build some overview of contextual information. As you know, we do have a strategic plan, and we have goals in each of these 5 areas. So curriculum instruction, college career readiness, social emotional learning, communications, and human resource literacy. I bring these to the forefront because everything we do, right, whether it's programming, staffing, goes right back to our goals. Board of Education, you have these in your first tab. If you wanted to read the specific goals, I have them all outlined in your folders. So as I go through the presentation, I'm going to actually take you through the sections that are in your binder. Those of you with us today have a copy of the presentation. The board does have some additional information with them. As we go through, we'll answer some of your questions and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'd like to spend some time going through some of our departments, costs of our departments, special project positions, and grants. So you'll see each of the tabs in your folder. I included an organizational chart. So if you go to, let's just start with administration. You'll see the organizational chart that comes in the department. Behind there, you have every single job description. And then the next tab, you have the cost of that department. So each of those, from CIA to administration to business and finance to human resources, you have the organizational chart, everybody who's currently there. You have the cost of salaries, and then you have any programs associated with that department that we have done a deep dive into. And I'll give you one example. If you go under administrative services, the next tab is K-5 athletics. And a breakdown of what K-5 athletics costs. We've done the same for virtual programming. You're going to see adult leisure program. You're going to see within here their building rosters, so if you have a question on costs, salaries, whatever, it's all included in your binder. I'm going to flip you a minute to the special projects tab next, which is all the way near the back. I think mine's green. I don't know if yours is green. But special project positions are non-union affiliated positions. So I also gave you a list and overview of what we currently have in our special projects and how they're funded. Some might be general funded, some might be grant funded. And then I also gave you under the tab of, I think it just says grants or grant overview, of current grants that we have and what salaries and programs are funded in the grants. So each of these literally have a specific tab, and then any type of costing associated with them, you have the information at your fingertips. Question and clarity? Yeah? Yeah?
And I think I know the answer to that.
Yep.
So in the initial tab for the administration,
Okay.
the second job posting,
Yep.
standards learning and innovation. I'm assuming that is the same as the
So-
curriculum instruction and assessment?
Nope, so the second one, it should say Assistant Superintendent of Administration.
So I have that, I have a assistant superintendent of administration, and
Yep.
then behind that,
Yes.
the assistant superintendent of standards learning and innovation.
Correct, that's me. So I'm glad you brought that up, because, so some of the job descriptions, many of them, like mine, have literally existed since, I think I came to Maryland 2017, 18. So as positions evolved, right, or new superintendents come in or whatever, we've had name changes. So yes, that is still me, even though my current is Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction.
I feel fair.
Yeah, I'm glad you lifted that too, because as we've done a deep dive into organizational charts, cost of departments, job descriptions, we've discovered a lot of things, meaning Jen Curry's job might evolve and look much differently today and does not match your job description, right? Or there's items that in my job description that are also in Maria's job. So we have a lot of overlap, we have some redundancy, we have some updates. So even though we're going through this time, right, it kind of created the perfect time to really do a deep dive into what people are doing for their jobs. Do we need that position, right? Is it already covered with the same position? And then also, as we go through by the end of the year, we'll have every single job description updated. We even need to start with ours as assistant superintendents, because our job descriptions, right, truly don't align with our organizational chart. So even as a team, we need to come together and say, okay, truly, I'm just going to use between the four of us, right, we are going to see that Julie and Scott both have buildings and grounds underneath their organizational chart, right? And we know that people too like to know who is my person, right? Who supervises me? Where do I get my direction? So we've, we have some cleaning up to do with that, but it was also a really good discovery that needs to be done. All right. Next, I'm going to move it over to Mr. Coco. He's going to start giving you some background and context into our building utilization.
Where's the camera right there? First of all, thanks for coming. I want to start by introducing Gino Montaigne. He's our last 7 months. He started 7 months ago as the Director of Buildings and Grounds. And the important data that you're going to see in my presentation tonight was all provided by Gino in regards to where we're at with our utilization and so on. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned him, and also it is another time to say you're doing an amazing job right now in that position. So I'm going to start by just giving an overview. I was at a couple of the community forums, and a lot of the questions or a lot of the suggestions were based on either closing schools, looking at selling properties, and so on. And we have several properties in the district that are located in Wayne, Westland, and in Inkster. This is not an easy process. I know when you look at stuff and you see what you think that the properties have value to them and buildings, you've got to be very careful when you start looking at selling properties and selling buildings. currently we have one of our properties, our vacant properties is only one that we have a building on it, and that's the Marshall property. And I'll just talk a little bit about that before we go in there, but the Marshall property has come up several times in these discussions at the community forums about possibly selling it. To give you a little bit of backdrop, some of the districts that I've been in have sold buildings or have sold properties, and we're talking about probably the majority of districts in southeast Michigan have sold buildings or properties. Most of the buildings were in this area because of the population boom in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. If you look at the dates, most of our buildings were built. It's been the 50s, 60s, or 70s, so you had a big population boom. So they were built, and for enrollment, that was probably double of most of the buildings. And you're going to see when I get into ours, we talk about where the enrollment numbers are and so on. I don't want anyone to get concerned over if you see two of our middle schools under 50%, because that's pretty typical for any school district in southeast Michigan based on sizes and people basically migrating away from the area. So I don't want anyone to say, God, if you look at this, we could close all of our buildings, you know, based on the utilization rate. Now, if you look at our elementaries, and I'll go into this a little bit as we go into our slides, but I do want to give you that backdrop, that it's not that easy to just sell a property and get money for it. We don't want to make any decisions that could be catastrophic for the district down the road for a short-term gain. So I just want to keep that in your mind as we go through the process. The first slide is the utilization. If you look at our district average, and I know that number is it's small, but it's 75% of our elementaries, which we have 10, we're using 75%, utilizing 75% of our buildings. And that all is predicated on building size and not just classrooms, but some buildings are larger than others in regards to how big their gymnasiums and other parts of the buildings are. Oops. I'll go down to the middle schools, and this is another, when you see at the bottom where district average is 48%, so under 50%, that shouldn't be a concern for anyone. I know if you were just looking out there and you didn't really know what was going on, you'd say, well, your utilization right now in your buildings is under 50%. I don't want anyone to be concerned about that because that's pretty typical for a middle school in this area. High school, same thing, we get to the numbers, 44%. I'm not going to go into detail, I just want to give you an idea when I get into the next slides of why some of the decisions that we're looking to make in this process and the data that we're using is important to understand where we're at with other buildings. And I'll ask for questions at the end if you have questions about some of these slides. Potential cost savings, this is for Walker Winter. We were tasked to do a study on where we were at with Walker Winter. Now, to give you some of the past, and I was not here at the time, but in 2018, the board, there was a proposal to close Walker Winter, and it was approved by the board at that time. So at this point, it was kept open. I believe the demolition was going to be scheduled for 2018 in the bond. Am I correct? 2019. But there was a thought that we were going to partner with Apple in that building, and we were going to move forward with making it more of a technologically advanced building. That has not come to fruition during this time. So we are going to start looking at this as being a possibility of closing this building at this point. It's not, it has not been proposed to the board, so I just want to make that very clear. If you go through some of the cost savings, the maintenance costs, close to $77,000, maintenance supplies close to $32,000, custodial supplies $20,000, custodial costs $236,000, contracted services $57,000, and so on, coming down to the bottom with a number of $476,000. Now that is not including any of the potential staff cost savings in that building. Not to say that we would have any cuts, but we could in regards to where students are placed and how we put them in other buildings. So that could potentially add on to that. and for every teacher is potentially $100,000 in cost savings. I just want to put that out there. Not that that means anything, because we still have the same number that would be reassigned to other buildings. Minimal bond funds were used for this building. So during the bond, we have not put any money in this building because it was scheduled to be closed. To keep this building open, we have to put between $5 and $6 million into this building. The 3 boilers in this building currently are at end of life. 17 of the 24 classrooms do not have air conditioning. So it's a building, it's a 72-year-old building. Not that that is old in regards to a lot of our buildings, because a lot of our buildings are in that range. But we do want, that's where we're trying to make a very fiscally responsible decision before we do anything with this. And that's why I'm giving you the data. Let's go back. The estimated cost for demolition would be $1 million, between $900,000 and $1 million. Just as of today, we had a real estate survey done on the property. $1.4 million was the assessment they gave without the building. So if we demolished it, we'd still be $300,000 on top in that scenario, along with the cost savings that could be potentially over $1 million every year. By the other slide that I showed you, which right here. If you added on its possible staff costs. Where would these kids go? Or where would we distribute our students? Most of them would be distributed to Graham and Schweitzer based on where utilization is. And we'd still have to go through and figure out what classrooms and so on that we could use in that space to be able to put our students into classrooms. Transportation is currently working on a schedule which would make a difference on where kids go to based on where they live and where the closest school would be to the majority of our students. So they'll be working on that for us, and that's something they did in 2018. It would just be reevaluating enrollment numbers and so on at this point. Current vacant properties, and as of today, I've visited all of them, took some pictures. We have 3 vacant properties in Inkster as of right now. We have one that has the label Blanchette Inkster. It's a nice piece of property. It's right across the street from a ballpark. It's in the middle of a subdivision. The one you probably know exactly where it's at. I would, this week, Dr. Weaver, myself, and Mr. Montaigne met with a broker to go, and we're going to work with them in regards to looking at our properties and putting them out there to see what they would be worth on the market. That was one of the properties that I was impressed with in regards to the size of it, the location. Could be potentially something that social services looks at, or even a community center. Housing, and so I really was impressed. That was the first time I actually seen that property. The other ones are smaller, and they're located in areas that are really, I'm going to be honest with you, going to be hard for anyone to have any interest in them, besides someone who would either build a house or something, but the other 2 are smaller pieces of property. The Marshall property, obviously, is one that we want to look at. And I did talk about the Marshall property costing $3 million at this point to demo it. And our real estate assessment came back at around 1.7. So it would not be fiscally responsible for us to demo that building this year and try to sell it in regards to what we would make on it. We would lose money on that. Not to say moving forward it would be something we would look at, because the worst thing you can do as a school district is to keep a vacant building on your property. And you really do not want to sell a property with a building on it. Several districts, even ones that I've been associated with before I came here, made catastrophic decisions because they sold properties with buildings on them, and then a charter school came in, or a private school, they got maybe $1 million for it,
in a 5-year period, they lost 15 million. When I was in Southfield, before I got there, we sold 4 buildings and lost in a 5-year period with charter schools and a Jewish monastery, they lost almost 1,500 kids. So the small amount of money they made, quick money, they lost. It was catastrophic for them in the long run. So that's why I say we got to be careful. And I was open, and I've talked to Ms. Curry about this and Dr. Weaver. We've been open to all suggestions. So the suggestions that came from the community were great. It makes us start to do this and start to get data. So I want to thank the people that brought this because it gives us where we need to go in regards to finding out the true data before we make a decision like that. If you guys are aware of this nature center, I'm not going to go through every one of them, but there is a park, like a trail that runs up here on the corner of Wayne Road and Marquette. You drive by it all the time if you come off there. That is that property. If you've been in the district long enough, you know the Tinkham property that we still have our kids going to are over the age of 26, so our students are still in that building. But we do have some properties that we're going to talk to a broker about selling. But like I said, we really want to be careful and have a data that makes sense financially, logistically, and academically before we make decisions on our buildings. So at this point, I guess I'll ask for if you guys have any questions. Yes?
Okay, I have a question concerning you're talking about the schools and how much are being utilized.
Yes.
I know I work at Graham and I'm a co-high teacher, Act 18. We have 4 Act 18 classrooms, 3 of those, 8 at the most students can be in my room 10. Have we taken that into consideration? Because at top says capacity 28 per room.
So that's why I said these numbers,
Right.
the utilization can be deceptive.
Right,
So
that's
you
why I
can-
want to make sure that we
Yes.
looked into that because we're
That's
getting more and
why I
more
said,
spec ed numbers and
don't be
classrooms.
overly concerned
Right.
with these numbers, but I want to be transparent. When I was
Right.
talking to Ms. Curry before we did this, we both said, listen, if we're going to start considering doing some of these things,
Right.
we've got to be transparent with the community and
Yeah.
say, this is where the utilization. That is a great point because that's why I said, don't be concerned with that number as much as you, because it looks like, oh my God, we only have 44% of our buildings not being utilized. That's not
So
necessarily true.
according to
because some of
state
your
law, we can
classrooms-
only have so many students in our classroom.
That's a great point.
So,
Thanks for bringing
and I
it
know
up.
that that falls under middle and high school as well, so
Yep.
I just want to make sure that is brought up.
Thank you. What is your name?
Kristen.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Can you just remind us how you get that percentage, the
You know what?
utilization percentage?
I'm going to pivot because Mr. Montaigne gave me the numbers.
The percentage is put together based on the teacher's contract. Back in the day of 28 for students per classroom. We utilize that with how many we can do safely, the square footage that we have, and that's what we calculate.
So it's the number of students per classroom.
At that time, it was bargaining 28 per teacher, and that's what we use. And we can use safely per classroom.
Okay.
So do you like count the number of classrooms?
We count the number of classrooms, we count the number of the teacher's contract, how many they can have per classroom, and then we factor that in. If the teachers negotiate a different number in their contract for overflows, that whole chart could be adjusted.
But you can also, you want to weigh in what Karen just said, where it's Karen, right?
Kristen.
Kristen, sorry. Where some of our classrooms, we can only have 5 to 8 kids in them sometimes, so you really have to be cautious on taking these numbers to heart. You know that.
No, I understand that because in some of the classrooms have 33, but you can't walk in them.
Right.
So I mean,
No,
square
good
footage of
point.
the classroom itself, like
Yep.
numbers wise, yes. But if you put 33 juniors in a classroom,
I'm glad you're making.
especially at
Yeah, I
the
know.
room I just left, yeah, you're not moving
I'm
around.
glad you're making these comments because if you were a person who wasn't in education or working in a building, you'd go, why are we closing, why are we doing something with these buildings? But these numbers are deceptive. Thank you.
Regards to Walker Winter, that is the only school within the district that is within Canton.
Yep.
Being that I live in Canton, I get a lot of flyers in the mail encouraging me to send my kids to the charter schools there within within that area. Have we looked at what the impact would be from a head count of students leaving because the other elementary schools are not really close, especially on the west inside of the district.
We have talked about that, because that was one of my biggest fears. When we started the discussions, one of the things that I brought up, like my biggest fear would be that we could potentially lose kids. We looked at some of the areas, a lot of the kids that are in that building are coming from. A lot of the areas would be easy to move, and most of those areas, and I don't have all the data, so I'm not going to sit here and bring up, but I know that talking to our transportation director today and last week, there's areas where a lot of the students need transportation to get to school. Potentially the ones that we could lose would be the ones like you're saying that have been cherry picked by the district for years. Honestly, just being here the last 4 years, I think when we took, what was the program we took out of there, Jen? When we took the tag program out, the kids that potentially were going to leave, I think they've already left.
And I think truly, if I'm quote me right, I believe there was, I'm not going to use the word only because I don't want to defeat the statement, but I think there was 12 school of choice to tag, the rest were in our district, right? So we were taking our own district students and you know, say they qualify for tag, but they might have gone to Hicks, and then we were transporting them over to Walker. I want to say it was like 11 or 12 that were inter-county school of choice.
That's a good point. I've seen what you said
Yeah,
happen.
I mean, it's,
I don't think that the number is not significant enough. It's pretty minor of how many school of choice students we get from Canton to Walker, right? And then if, right, and we'll talk as we go through with our recommendations, that we would be very cognizant of what is that number, right? And if that were to happen, there was obviously, hey, are there other schools in Inver County? Being if the school were to close, here's some other options.
yeah, but also as a taxpayer in Canton, and my property taxes go to support the Wayne Wesleyan School District. Why am I supporting a district that doesn't even have a building within my community? And that would be the other thing. Residents feeling alienated by their own school district.
That's another good point.
Yeah, and we would definitely share even as before, when I said like there's, you know, there'd be reboundaries, right? So you would have a new Wayne Wesleyan School adult home school, right? Which would more than likely be either Graham, Roosevelt, or Schweitzer. So we would be full transparent, right? Here would how we would draw the new boundaries. Here's where your child would go to school. You probably know too that Graham and Schweitzer are very close in proximity to Walker as well.
So I have a follow-up question. I'm just wondering, since this was discussed back in 2018.
Yes.
when it was made, what was that conversation, if anybody knows, or what did that look like in terms of, Andrew's question in terms of like the taxpayers, right? Or are we still collecting? Are we still getting taxes from Canton? Do we lose that?
Here, I can
We're no longer gonna have water?
answer that.
Okay.
Just like Mr. Amber said, you would still, because that section of Canton is still assigned to that building. So they would still, and that's why the point would be, you know, I'm paying taxes in Canton, and I don't have a building in Canton, which would be a valid, you know, question when you're sitting in and making decisions. That's why when we talk today, we have to, you know, this isn't something that just we thought of overnight. First of all, the decision was made in 2018. These are hard decisions that you're gonna make, but you really gotta look at the cost savings in that building would be, I mean, I'm just going on the low end. I'd say between $1 million and $1.5 million, just going on the low end on a yearly basis. And that's without even selling the property. And if we sell the property, we would get at least, you know, 1.3. But we're gonna get it back. The demo's gonna cost $1 million. We'll get that back just if we sell it, or if we don't, we're gonna get that back in a year or two. It's the one that fiscally, logistically, and academically, I'm gonna use some words, I guess, with a little caution, makes the most sense.
From an enrollment standpoint, it's our lowest
Yeah.
enrollment school, just for,
And that's
it's
obvious.
that, you know,
Yes.
And then that part, when I run for office, there's a little subdivision in Romulus too.
There is.
Feeds into that with the work. Because like, you know, you run for school board, you run neighborhoods, and I know how far, like,
Yeah.
really in the back, like way out there. I'm like, oh my God, who gets this the bus? It's like super far. Even
And they're bringing kids in from there to Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they are. I mean, you have, there's always gonna be, nothing's gonna be perfect when you do these. I hate it, because I've been in districts, and it's just one of the most difficult things to make from our job standpoint is COVID school. Yes?
And I want to clarify something, and what Melanie just said actually feeds right into that is, that's not to minimize what you're saying, Mr. Ambrose, at all. We already have cities that send kids to our schools where we don't have a building for their community.
Correct.
That's
Romulus, Taylor. Yes.
A good consideration, like for Marshall, it's not just cost of demolition and what we can sell it for. I know that at least one developer had pre-planned it for, I think, 98 homes. So if what we get out of the children that move into those homes, the taxes that go to the city, you know, the money that we get from that just keeps going and going and going.
And we met with the broker, Mr. Neal, this week, like I said, that has potentially some ideas or some people that could be potentially interested in that property. And I do think the best use of that property would be a subdivision. I think, and I just reading the paper today, you're going to see the interest rates are starting to go down. And I think when that gets to the point, maybe we're going to have some more builders that would be interested in that property. Yes?
Change of topic somewhat. How much was the income, if anything, when the library was using it for the short term? Because I know we've talked, it's been talked about using the buildings in the district.
Right. You're talking about the library at Marshall? What are you talking about?
The the Westland William P. Faust Library here was reconstructing, so they went over to Marshall and they used it for 3 months or something, and then they moved back to the library while they were doing construction.
Okay.
Did the district charge them, and how much
Did they
money?
make money?
I'm looking at like,
Julie or Kim?
we were like,
I can answer that
Go ahead.
question. It was over 200,000.
okay.
I don't know the exact number, but
Because I know we've talked about like
Probably very close to
renting out different things,
250,000.
and I just want to make sure that we,
We'll get back to Marshall, but I want to make it very clear, because it's come to my attention in several conversations in the last 2 months, that Marshall is a turnkey building. And a turnkey home is you open the door, you walk in, and you're fine. That building is not. That
No,
building
I worked there.
needs
I know.
about between $23 and $25 million invested in that building to even put human beings in there to be safe. So I want to throw that out there because Marshall is not a turnkey building. Okay, I'll stop there. Anyone else? Thank you. Alex.
All right, good evening, next. All right, so I thank everyone for coming out tonight. For those of you who haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Alex O'Feely. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Forgive me, my voice is a little bit hoarse, so I might have taken some sips of water tonight. I don't have as many slides to touch on, but I do want to give a few important updates before I kind of walk you through my portion of the presentation. So for those of you who are aware, we are in a negotiation here with our teachers and our principals, and I'm very, very happy to say that at our last session with our principals, we were able to come to some agreements with the last articles that we were looking through in the contracts, and in the very near future, we'll be presenting something to the board to let them know before students arrive that we've come to a close of bargaining for our principals. So I want to give a big kudos to our leadership team that was sitting at the table and to the building principals that were part of the WABA bargaining, because I'm happy to say that was a good back and forth, that we did something I think everyone's going to be happy with. As far as the teachers, we're making strides towards that, and we're hopeful that we can continue to move in the right direction. So as far as bargaining with WABA, we've come to an end. The board will be getting something soon, and with our teachers, we're going to continue to work towards that. The other update I wanted to give is as far as our hard-to-fill positions. So this is the time of the year where we're doing a lot of hiring in the HR department, and I know a lot of people, there's been talks about like right sizing of positions and this, that, and the other, and we have positions, and it's not unique to Wayne Westland that are just hard to fill. So there's some positions that, and the reason I'm bringing this up, speaking to the community, speaking to anyone here, whether it's a math position, a science position, our paraprofessional positions, some of our resource room special ed, ancillary positions that are hard to fill. So if you know of anyone that's interested, please have them go to the district website to apply, because we've hired some great people, but those positions are typically hard to fill every single year. And we're still working together to get to those hires. So I just want to let you guys know, we do have positions that are challenging, and the ones that I mentioned are the ones that are traditionally hard to fill. All right, so for the next portion of my presentation, I'm going to sit at some point, but there's a lot of conversation as we've been looking at positions. What is the process if we do have to reduce or we have to lay off positions? And there's contract language in all of our collective bargaining groups. Inside of everyone's packet today, and I'm going to go through, I'm not going to speak to everything, but I'm going to give you guys some of the language that we use if we get to that point. It's in the tab that says layoff, discipline, and contractual, right in the HR, or right in the HR tab. There's information that explains what we do, and I want to start with this. This is just information. I don't want anyone to hear this presentation and believe that there's going to be massive cuts across the district. But as you guys know, we've been looking across all departments, all spaces for ways to be fiscally responsible. And at some point, we might have to have some conversations around personnel. So what I wanted to do today is just walk people through some of the language that's used when we do get to that point and we have to reduce within different spaces. So I'm going to sit just so I can do this. All right, so I was able to work with my team, and we were able to look at all the contracts and pull some of the language that speaks to what the process would be for layoffs and recall if we were to make some reductions. And right at the top of the page is language out of Article 12 in the WWAP contract, which is for paraprofessionals. If we ever did have to make some reductions, the process for layoff would start with the probationary teachers first, then the least senior teachers, and paraprofessionals. Let me restate that. For paraprofessionals, in this contract, it will be probationary employees will be laid off first, followed by the least senior paraprofessionals. And if we were to make that decision, they would have to be contacted within 20 days before it's brought to the board for a vote. And for that group, much like some of the other positions, they have recall rights. So what that means is, if there were layoffs, they would have the ability to return to a position before we could hire someone outside of that group. So I want to be really clear about that. A lot of the contract language in all groups, for the most part, has something to say. If we have to downsize and eliminate a position, you lose your position. Before we can go outside of your group, we have to give you an opportunity to return. And it spells it out in each one of these groups. Another example would be language with Local 4, which includes our custodians, the food service folks, transportation, and student monitors. If we ever have to make layoffs due to a decrease in work funds or buildings, we would start with our probation employees first. Then we go to our lowest senior folks, and then we would also have to contact those employees 20 days before a recommendation is being made to the board for them to make that decision. And again, that group would have recall rights for up to 2 years based on seniority to return to those positions before we could hire outside of that group. I'll give another example. If we were ever to use BOSS, for example, with the specialized skilled trades folks, if we ever had to make some layoff decisions, we would start with the probationary folks first, then followed by employees laid off based off of seniority, based off of their classification. And again, they would have to be notified within a certain time. And if they lost the position, they would have recall rights as well. Now, going to some of the administrative positions, they're a little bit different in the sense that we could still make reductions, but I'll use WABA, for example, which is our building principals. Should there be a reduction in administrative positions, we would have to meet with the WABA group first, the WABA leadership, to see if they had any alternatives, and then we would retain administrators based off of their seniority, followed by their certifications and qualifications, and then their effectiveness ratings. So if we have to make a decision because we went down in the building, there would be kind of a checklist that we would have to follow, and then based off of someone's effectiveness rating. So if someone was minimally effective, that might impact them being on the, you know, I don't want to say the child, that doesn't sound right, but they would be the administrator that might lose their position before someone that's effective or highly effective. And then WACOLA, Central Office Administrator, same position, where we would meet with the WACOLA leadership first, and then we would inform them of the reasons of the reductions. We will then give the district would consider volunteers before involuntarily transferring them. Employees would then be moved to a lower job classification and assignment because of the reduction of the number of WACOLA positions, but they would be still paid at that same rate if they were moved for 1 year. And if we were to do something where we were eliminating the position at the end of the school year, we would have to make sure that we're following contract language for non-renewal. So the reason for me kind of walking through some of this language is there's kind of a scuttlebutt or rumors around the district that sometimes when decisions are being made, they're being done without contract language driving those decisions. Everyone's protected, that's outside of our special projects, is part of a collective bargaining agreement, and in order for us to make a decision, we're working with the unions, and we're having to make sure that we follow a process before anything's being recommended to our Board of Education. So this is kind of a little cheat sheet that we're sharing with our board, and again, I want to be crystal clear. We are not saying that we're going to be walking out of this retreat with the intentions of starting massive layoffs across the district. However, I wanted to make sure that people understand we do follow contract when it does get to that point of making reductions in different departments. Does anyone have any questions about some of them? Okay.
So I have a point clear.
Yes.
So when I'm reading, for example, under the personal care professional, and it reads that the third bullet point in regards to a set layoff at least 20 calendar days prior to the effective date of such layoff. And so when you were going over this briefly, you mentioned like the board, right? Like 20 days prior to the board decision. And I'm not reading this way, so that's why I want clarity on that. Like, is this a matter of they would the 20 days, would it come before the board, before they receive the 20 day notice? Because I don't think it should come before the board, like on the 20th day. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say, like, it should be, people, to me, the way I'm reading this, if we're doing a layoff, the board should be approving those layoffs prior to the effective date. So prior to the 20 calendar day. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
So then there isn't any discrepancies or uncertainty on when that date is effective.
Yes. And one thing that we're going to make sure that we do as a leadership team is before any decisions are being made, the board will be in the know, because we want to make sure that before we start going down any path, that one, the board understands, but again, before anyone loses a position, it does have to be approved by board vote.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear on like the day so that we actually want us to have.
I think Dr. Weaver waivers the same real great.
Dr. O'Feely, my thought comes on the other end when we hire. And I'm an old dog myself, so I don't want anyone to get offended. But are we making a concerted effort when it comes to teachers to get people at lower steps or brand new to teaching rather than bringing someone in at
So Dr. Ben, that's a great
13
question. The question that was asked, are we being intentional about where we're bringing people in? So it's no secret that we're not in the position now that we were once in financially as a school district. And I can tell you for many of the hires that we've just made, we are just actively seeking out new teachers or teachers at the very bottom of the scale. And in some rare situations where they're very hard to fill, like a unicorn position, like a speech pathologist, we might have to meet them where they are because we need to meet the students' IEP needs.
Right.
But to your point, we are being very intentional, where there have been some really good candidates, but we couldn't bring them in because we couldn't fill them.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yes, I want to make sure that the community hears this loud and clear. We are making sure that we're being very fiscally responsible with offers that we're making at this point. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, my question, I had no idea the question that, Ms. May had, but my question is the same, basically what her question is about the 20-day layoff that they didn't notice 20 days prior to coming before the board meeting. So my concern is that if they got the notice on the 9th, and now it's the 29th, and the board meeting is on the 27th. So we vote, and they gonna be laid off in 2 days.
So that's what I was
Right,
trying to and say.
you-
It would,
right,
they,
yeah.
that it wouldn't happen that way.
Right, so
They
that was,
wouldn't receive a notice until after the board approved.
okay, so that was my question, I didn't know what your question was.
Yeah,
So
so
it was
the
just
board
like,
then, so they
Right.
would know it's going to board, right? To be fully transparent that Mr. Toko, your position is going to board upon board approval, then you get your official notice.
right, so that's the most important part right there.
And then here's the other thing, there's not gonna be, I realize the sensitivity of employment. And you have a family to take care of, there's not gonna be surprises if we ever get to a point where there's gonna be a recommendation for a layoff. And again, we're not in a great situation where we're getting out of a bad situation with some of the decisions that we're making. And we treat people the same way we want to be treated. So I want to say that's just
I'm not sure if I'm correct, but it seems like in the past, this notification requirement caused the district to issue a notification of possible layoff at the end of the school year as a forewarning for the start-up for the next year. A lot of people got these notices with the idea to meet, I think, that contract language. And then they may or may not have gotten laid off, depending on how things shake out. I don't know if I'm right in that. It seems to be a sort of a memory of how things are done. And if that is true, then how does this discussion work out? I mean, now we're saying, no, we can't give anybody a notice unless the board has already voted to get rid of specific people, then they get a notice?
No, I think, and if I'm misunderstanding, or if I'm not stating this clearly, any of my colleagues can jump in, we want to give people, this is a minimum notice that we want to make sure to be within the contract, the ability to make the layoff, at least that amount of time. There have been times where people, looking at our staffing, you could get a notice that you're going to be laid off a teacher at the end of the year, and then due to someone retiring or a need for the position, it never goes to board vote because we need that position. So a lot of the language where we see a number is a number that we have to, in order for us to make the decision or the recommendation, at least have that notification.
The reason I bring this up is I don't want this to end up being a policy change whereby the board now says, hey, you can't give anybody a notice unless we vote on it first. Because that has been your right and your policy for years and years and years and years. This discussion here should change that. I'm not saying that you need to change what they're asking about.
Right.
In other words, for this particular circumstance, because we haven't told anybody that they're getting laid off, you might want to do that. I don't know. But it shouldn't be a policy change based on what you've done in the past. Again, I could be wrong, but it seems to me we've given notices way in advance, and it did not necessarily mean that they got laid off.
So I can speak to that. When Dr. Feely was talking, he was talking about one group. Say, for instance, you're in one of the administrative groups. There's different guidelines that go that you would be given notice in April if you were going to be losing your position. I know April Fool's Day used to be a weird day, but in these positions, that's where you're either going to be non-renewed or not renewed. So every contract states something different. The layoff is not official until the board approves it. So when he talks about the 20 days for the paraprofessional, so once the board approves it on a Monday night, say in June, that employee would have 20 days beyond that.
Okay.
But that's not for all. So if you went into different contracts, if you're told in April, you're done June 30th, you're done.
And Mr. Neal, so teachers, for example, in their contract is 30 days,
Yeah.
right? So that would definitely, 30 days before the end of the school year, let's say, right, as Dr. Feely's
Yeah.
doing his staffing, we would have an idea for staffing for the fall, what do we need, which drives the layoff list, which then by early May, he would already be bringing that to board, saying this is what we're looking at. If for some reason, knock on wood, we lost 2,000 kids or something, right? So then we'd have those literally aligned, like all those ducks in a row.
And if we had a situation, and not to get ahead of myself, but where we knew a grant might be running out at a certain point and we were gonna be making a decision, we'd wanna tell the employee that based off of the funding, this is the decision, we tell them as soon as we could. So let's say at the end of the year, there's a funding source that's no longer gonna be there, we would tell someone just to give them an opportunity to explore, other alternatives or other employment options. Because again, I get right now that we're in a situation where we might have to make hard decisions. The big thing is we don't want to catch anyone off guard.
Yeah, you want to be humane when you make a decision like that. But just like I want to reiterate, that was just one of the contracts that there's a lot of other ones that don't require, they would require like the 30-day notice and 90-day notice that you could tell them before. But that was just one of the situations.
I was just wondering if you were going to talk about the WWEA, because you mentioned all the other major ones, but you never talked about the process for WWEA.
All right, so for the ancillary staff members in the WWEA, which would include the teachers and support staff, the ancillary folks would include the speech, social workers, psychologists, OTs, PTs, nurses, counselors, etc. If we did have to do layoffs, we would, for the ancillary folks, it would start with the least senior employees would be laid off first. And then employees would be notified of said layoff at least 30 days prior to the end of the current school year. Laid off employees would have recall rights for up to 6 years and could be recalled to the first vacancy for which they're certified in reverse order of the layoff. So again, they have recall rights as well. And then for our teachers, there's board policy that speaks to the layoff process. So for the teachers, it would start with the reduction shall take place first based on departments and locations. The district would start the layoffs with the teachers with the lowest effectiveness rating, which is essentially minimally effective teachers would be the first that would be on that list, followed by effective and then highly effective. That's going out of the equation, but highly effective ratings. And then the next portion of that would be when all elements within the level are equal and the candidate can't be differentiated, should the superintendent or his designee move to the next level, these levels as follow. So then you would go into individual performance. So the evidence would be based off of student growth, which shall be a predominant factor in assessing the employee's individual performance, followed by the teacher's demonstrated pedagogical skills, including at least a special determination concerning the teacher's knowledge of his or her subject area. So that might be special presentations that are being done, special roles that you might have within your school. Then followed by the teacher's management of the classroom, manner of efficacy of disciplined pupils, rapport with parents and other teachers, and the ability to withstand the strain of teaching. Then teachers' attendance and disciplinary records would then come into play. Follow that up, you would have the significant relevant accomplishments and contributions. These factors shall be based within the individual's contributions, and then relevant special training. If all of the above factors are equal, the superintendent or his designee may consider a teacher's seniority or tenure status. For the teachers, it's at least 25 days prior to the date of layoff in order for this to be, for it to be brought to the board.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So we are still in the process of bargaining with our teachers, and language may change depending on where we land with the contract.
Thank you.
And to clarify what the other board members asked in regards to the 20 days, just like this contract says 30 days, so Dr. Feely would bring those layoffs at least 30 days prior to the end of the school year, so you guys would have already voted on it, and it would have been official at that point, and then you'd still have at least 30 days after that.
And I want to just say this, as someone that's been here, going to the third year in the position, one of the things that's been said loud and clear is the importance of transparency, the importance of open communication. So I think we're at a point where we're moving a really good direction. And as far as some of the work with Steve Kahn moving into a new ABA president, I'm sorry, not ABA, but
WWEA.
WEA president position, I know his goal is to make sure that we really establish open lines of communication as well. So I'm feeling good about the direction between the partnership between the union and district leadership at this time. And that would be my portion of today's presentation. I don't know if I did my
know, I'm Julie Campbell, Assistant Superintendent of Business, Finance, and Operations. I just want to touch on something in our July board meeting. The board approved a plan for the district to partner with Treasury in resolving our potential fiscal distress issue. After that board meeting, Treasury did get a hold of Assistant Superintendent, Acting Superintendent Curry and myself, and told us that that was off the table since we did adopt a deficit budget for the fiscal year 24-25. We no longer needed to do that partnership, but now we're in a place where we have to do a deficit elimination plan. It's much more involved than the work we were going to do with Treasury. That would have been periodic reporting and receiving advice and guidance from Treasury. The other option that we had been given was to contract with RISA for administrative review, which would have probably cost us money to enter in a contract. So when we're talking about a deficit elimination plan, it's very structured how we have to go about doing that. And again, I just want to reiterate that what we asked the board to vote on last month is now no longer, it's a moot point. So the state of Michigan dictates exactly how we do. Jacinda, can you advance the state of Michigan Department of Treasury dictates exactly how we prepare our deficit elimination plan. This is a sample of the financials that we need to submit initially, and this basically goes, it's budget detail in all of our functions, so it's basically what the board approves for each budget amendment at the function level, and this we're required to project out as long as we think it's going to take us to get out of deficit. So with that, if we think that's going to be 2 years, we have to go out to fiscal year 25-26. If we think it's going to be 5 years, we have to go out to 2031. However long it takes us to project ourselves out of deficit. The next thing that we have to do as part of this is a narrative for each of the fiscal years that we're budgeting. So we have to talk about in words. The first slide I showed you was numbers. This is in words what that first slide represents. And so this would be very transparent as well. We're required to put our deficit elimination plan on our website, on our transparency site. And so anyone can go anytime and see where we are. And well, they can see what our plan is and where we are progressively in our plan. Because the third thing that we have to do is submit a monthly report that financially shows where we're at, and the Treasury's going to make sure that aligns with our plan. And then also each month we have to include a narrative in words what that monthly report represents. And nuances that might not be clear in numbers. Are there any questions about the deficit elimination plan? Mr. Neely?
At the end of the elimination plan, let's say you project out and we succeed in eliminating a deficit over 3 years, do we still remain in a guarded position, a watch-over position, because then we would end up being potentially fiscally distressed still,
Yes.
having just climbed out?
Thank you for that question. It's actually 2 years with a non-deficit financial audit that would take us off the watch list.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. The only other thing I wanted to show the board and the community is a coming soon from the business department. We typically don't do an amended budget this soon, a month after or 2 months after adopting our original budget. But you may have heard that when the state passed their budget for funding for schools, it was very different than anything we've ever seen in the past. And so we were able to do an amended budget in August. Now that we have a deficit elimination plan, we're required to do that anyway. But we are going to present our first amendment of the year in our August board meeting, and the Finance Committee will get a little sneak peek of that on August 8th. So we're going to incorporate all those unexpected changes that happened at the state level. It was really a surprise for districts, the way they gave money in restricted areas and took away money in unrestricted areas. So it's going to look different. The other thing is we have an opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to partner with a company called New Metrics. And most districts in the state of Michigan that partner with a data dashboard to do like their financial or their transparency page on their website and things like that use this New Metrics company. I am pleased to have New Metrics present a little demo as to what this data dashboard can do. It's a very powerful tool. It increases transparency. It helps the business office with budget projections and different scenarios we can plug in to help in bargaining. And it also allows us to control the data that the state holds in, it's called FID, it's a financial information database that every public school in the state of Michigan has to upload their financial report every year into, and it takes that data, and we can pick and choose our peer districts to compare ourselves in any benchmark or any metric that we can think of. It's very dynamic, very powerful, and very informative. It's going to be a really great tool, and I'm really excited to bring a demo to the Finance Committee meeting and then to the board meeting in August. Any questions, Mr.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can answer this tonight, but why weren't we informed as a board before we adopted the deficit budget that we were going to have to go through this debt elimination plan or whatever you called it instead of working with treasury?
Well, we got that communication from the state after the board meeting in July. We didn't know before the board meeting in July. We were working with a different department in Treasury who was telling us, giving us advice on the potential fiscal distress category that we were
And
going to.
when Ms. Campbell and I met with the Department of Treasury, he didn't even lift. I mean, we were worried that this would be the next step. So truly, we got an email that said, now actually this is the next step. We move you from the Department of Treasury, we move you over to NPE.
I want to piggyback on that. I understand that, but like, what caused it to go to the next step?
The adoption of a deficit budget for fiscal year 25.
So is this a specific policy that's what happens when we adopt the deficit budget?
Yes.
I'm not trying to be rude about it, but why wasn't it anticipated this would happen, and why were we not?
Well, because we were working with Treasury.
Right, but
and
if
we
their
got
policy
different
is we
information.
adopt the deficit budget, we move to this, why weren't you aware of that?
Because Treasury gave us different information when we were having conversations with them.
And when we,
They knew we adopted the deficit budget, and yet they were still guiding us to this option 1, option 2.
yes, that was what I remember. His name is Sam. He literally had that conversation with the two of us, a virtual meeting, and literally said, here is your step. You would work with us. We would meet with you. We do periodic reporting. And then probably a few weeks after that, in July, we received that email. Because we were both like, oh, we honestly, we felt just as you feel right now. We were like, oh, we didn't realize. We thought truly we were going to work with the Department of Treasury. And then we said, no, we actually now move you over to NPE to do the deficit elimination. And we said the same thing, well, we could just do the same. So I feel like it was an extra move that we truly did, that I can at least speak for
moving forward with all the finances that are being bounced around and shared in presentations, what, is this going to be on the website? Is this going to be something that was going to be shared every month? I know I didn't speak to it the other thing, but how are, you're talking about transparency. Moving forward, is there something that you're going to be able to show us?
We're required to keep our deficit elimination plan and all the updates on our transparency page on our website.
Okay.
And, I mean, I would be bringing that to finance, and if the board, would request that, I would bring it to the board meeting each month too. Because we do have to do the monthly reporting. To the end. Any other questions?
Do you have sufficient staff to get the job done?
It's a matter of prioritizing. You know, we do what we have to do. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, so now that you have background, we're going to kind of see now where we headed based on our survey communications. The last tab of your folder, you have a full survey results, a copy of the survey more in depth than what I'm going to show here. So you can always see, and you can go to that copy as well. But I'm going to give you an overview of our meetings. 1,195 online responses and 36 paper responses. We had 131 feedback. And then we had an additional 95 people who all 3 days came to the communication meetings. Overall, I'm not going to read each of these to you, but you can see that 40% parent guardian, 25% teachers. That was I'm going too fast. Experience more than 10 years that you've been associated with the district, over 50%. Cost saving measures which support the reduce the budget deficit. So this is big picture. What should be prioritized for funding? Teaching staff. There were other things in Board of Education, you'll see them in your packet. It all goes down to, we give all those choices, but these were the biggest, the most responses, biggest percentages. If you believe in your budget cuts with at least impact on student education, right? Here, loud and clear, I mean, we have over 70%. Ideas for increasing revenue. We talked about the properties today. Some other ideas too, how we can bring money into the district. Other suggestions. Again, right, I'm just going to bring out the elephant in the room. You're going to see some themes as you go through here. Okay. So, as surveys were happening, feedback was happening, we were digging through programs, we were looking at staffing, looking at job descriptions, right? We're still truly doing all those things. When I say this is literally ongoing, this is going to be continuously ongoing. It's not going to be, we've eliminated a few positions and now we're done, right? It's truly an ongoing, I want to be very transparent in that. As we're looking at grants running out, as we're digging deeper into departments, as we're looking at programs, as we're digging into the program evaluations. So I don't want to say this is just things that we're going to do now, or I might get to the point where, hey, we hit the number, we're good. No, we're literally going to do it until we are truly staffed appropriately, our programs are running as they should, we're looking at enrollment, all of those things. With that being said, and I do want to pull out, I heard loud and clear, right? Central office is too heavy. People have been saying that probably for the past 6 months to a year. Within, this is since June 30th, within, I'm just going to speak to each group, within central office, you'll see it's really 6 positions because I consider all these WACOLA positions. We've reduced by 6 positions in central office. projects. This just equates in itself to about it's actually $2,357,926. That's general fund. An additional $135,000 of it is two different grants, service learning funds and HRA funds. Those will be reallocated, right? Probably if we can fit some other to relieve the general fund a little bit, so we'll be looking at that closely. And then 31AA funds and our ESSER funds and our homeless grant funds are no longer, I'm going to use the word valid, right? ESSER funds are gone. The homeless grant funds are gone as of, is it September 30th? And then 31AA, as you know, there's been a big reduction with our 31AA. However, there's going to be an increase with our 31A, so we're trying to figure out that shell game as we speak. Pause for a minute. Yes.
Student monitor position, is that 31A or is that 31AA?
We had them originally in 31A, but we moved them over to 31AA last year. Yes. So I do want to bring up another, you might have heard some buzz about strength and conditioning coordinator, right? I always say I'm going to kind of lift things as they come up. And the two special projects positions, you'll see it on a slide in a minute, that we were going to bring to the Board of Education in the August meeting. One, hence, has resigned. The strength and conditioning coordinator did work with our gym teacher, PE teacher, coincide, so the classes are still going to run, kids are still going to get those courses. It is one of those which is a hard conversation, right? But when we're going through it, truly, right, how can we still service kids? How can we staff appropriately and be fiscally responsible? So it's one of those where I don't want to use the word redundancy, but at the same time, right, special projects should be brought in, right, to maybe teach us certain skill set and do something, right, so that it builds Scott's capacity, and then, you know, it either goes on by itself, or if you really, really need that special project position, eventually they would become Yes.
Two questions. The HRA, what is that? What is that? Do you know what that is?
Yes, thank you. So, I don't know the acronym, but what does it stand for?
Those are, I believe it's American Rescue. It's the McKinney-Venturi.
No, that's not
HRA.
HRA.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay.
I need that. I'll get you that. Actually, no, I'll get it for you.
Okay,
Yes.
I was
Yes.
just curious. And then the PBIS, do we get money from RISA to support PBIS?
We do, each school does.
Okay.
But it's so minimal and it's for incentives, like they
So it's
really.
really for the student?
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
Yes, so these where it says special projects, we're fully general fund.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Do we know, we've had this conversation with them before, do we know how much money RISA is holding for us in their accounts?
For, you mean,
For, you know, that they're supposed to distribute to districts?
so I can tell you, just speaking to the Act 18 funds, what we've requested in our budget, right? There's never, in the past 3 years, it's been very, very minimal that they might not have approved. So they do have additional Act 18 money at RISA, right? But at the same time, as we're requesting our programs, I feel like it's been pretty appropriate of how we staff our classrooms. And I don't know, Julie, if there's other funds outside of RISA that you might be referring to that we can think of.
When we went through this before, I'm not sure, but it was like, seems like it was like $3 million that they were keeping in their account for us.
Okay.
It's been a long time
Yeah.
ago now, but we had their treasurer over here and everything, trying to get them to release money, and they just wouldn't.
Okay, I'll get into that a little bit and see what I can figure out, if it's additional to what that 18 funds. Okay, so continuing on with that, some additional programs that we've eliminated or reduced, or done some reductions to. Concentric Services is a company that many of you have heard about that as well. Champions now is offering a 3-year-old, expanding their 3-year-old programming, so it'll still be tuition based. We truly were not, as you can see, starting a tuition-based program was still costing the general fund money as well as service learning grant. We have reduced the staffing in our multilingual learner program staffing for paraprofessionals. You have the costing sheets again under the departments if you're curious of what that cost was. These 4 paraprofessionals will be reassigned to other open positions. Elementary virtual learning program. Currently, the K-5 virtual learning. So we have right now slated for 2 classes, a 2-3 split and a 4-5. This could potentially go down to 1. We have right now 10 students enrolled in the 2-3 online, and I think it's 17 in the 4-5. Just as we wouldn't run an in-person classroom with 10 students in it, right? We treat the virtual the same. So that K-5 space, truly we're going to recommend, you'll see that we just phase out that K-5 space. That 6-12, which we can get into later, later time, is a revenue generator. Now, Innovative Academy, I want you to remember that's completely separate than this virtual space. Two different things. Special education director positions. So recently, we've had a lot of discussions and posting. We've had some movement in our special education department. Mrs. Mallet is now the executive director, which opened up other positions. Instead of making director positions, propose that we make supervisor positions. Up until today, we're still having some conversations with the central office union and to see where we go from there. So full disclosure, because you probably saw the posting was pulled because we want to, even though we got green light yesterday, when the union comes back and say, can we have more conversations, we say absolutely, we'll have more conversations. So I think it was one where they made a quick decision, hesitant a little bit, and asked, hey, can we come back to the table to talk? Sure. Okay, so now some recommendations, which goes with everything that you've seen. And this is after pulling our team together, really going through some data, give you some initial recommendations that you will more than likely see our leadership team bring to future Board of Education meetings. These are going to look a little vague at first, so I'll get into more details. So we've already established a fee structure for external organizations using district facilities. Ms. Campbell has set that up. So in the past, if I'm correct, somebody wanted to use the facilities, there was not a charge, right? So there is going to be a charge whether you are one of our partners or not to use our facilities. We are going to be recommending to eliminate positions and programs funded through grants that cannot be sustained by the end of the school year. We have some grants that are running out at the end of the year. We do have positions in those grants. We have programs in those grants. As we look at our strategic plan and think truly where are we going to be 2 years down the road, will that position still be here? Do we need that position? Can somebody else do that position? So there are going to be some conversations happening sooner and later around those specifically. We're also going to continue to review, and we are looking at consolidating some positions in the district. We have some, whether they're at central office or in buildings, people doing the same work. Gradually phase out the elementary virtual program. Discontinue the adult leisure program. It's a very, very low enroll program right now. There's, I think it was 6 maybe classes, 1 to 2 students. Doesn't start till September. You have the cost, it's behind, I think, CIA associated with it. There's currently one class that is actually taught by one of our district employees. The rest are not. And that runs about 15 participants. But the rest, it's not creating any revenue that's worth, and it's about probably up to a $120,000 to $150,000 savings. We talked about underutilized schools. Our leadership team will going to have some more deep conversation, but more than likely be coming with a recommendation to close Walker Winter by the end of the school questions? I know that we talked a lot through, but yes, Mr. Gill.
So actual dollar wise, I see about 2.8 million that you've identified that we're going to cut out between central office and some program reductions. How many more millions are we looking to cut out?
Well, so if we kept spending how we were spending, right, we were gonna end up in $8 million deficit, right? And we got even go above that. So I think that between, this is the same, still a lot more than this. We want to truly see what the amendment budget brings in. We want to see with the new, I'm not gonna say, but with the transfers and the addition categoricals where we're landing. Because even landing at zero is not okay, right? So to give you an exact number right now, I would say we're status quo without knowing additional funding sources. I mean, we're looking at least, I think, 8 more million.
8 more million, does that include the money that we have to pay for the money we borrow?
That's going to be incorporated in the budget amendment. The interest.
But that 8 million, you think, does that encompass that additional money that we pay now to borrow money?
No, because that's not going to actually count as revenue for us. It's on the balance sheet because we have to pay it back.
We want to get to a healthy fund balance. Now, I hear you in saying that, okay, we're at 8 million, we cut, we're down to 6.5, and then the additional, having the 4 years to pay the tax money back, right, that's another 2 million that comes back. So truly, until Ms. Campbell presents the budget, then we'll be able to say, hey, here's literally where we're aiming for.
So obviously, our next meeting is a big meeting, right? Because we're supposed to find out when the other shoe drops, but we don't get to know ahead of time. I mean, knowing the central office is laying off people is great to make some people really happy. But it really doesn't get to what everybody really wants to hear. And that's, where's the rest of it coming from, and when do we as a board get to find that out? I know that some people on the board especially spend a lot of time talking about first reads and second reads, and people need to know ahead of time, and yet I'm hearing that we're going to get a plan given to us, and we're going to be expected to vote on that plan at our next meeting. And I don't see how that happens, because I don't even know what it is.
You mean as far as, go ahead.
I mean, I can address the point of this workshop was to have these discussions, find out what we've done so far, and get board input at what we do next. We're finding out at the meeting in 2 weeks. It's not like we're saying we're going to find out 4 months from now. We're going to find out at a meeting in 2 weeks, but this is an opportunity for the board to also give suggestions and talk through things and talk through positions and everything. So the point of this meeting was to work towards that. I mean, the hope was the board members would come to this meeting and have suggestions and, ideas and such that they might be able to help, work towards that, not complaints about what the administration has done so far.
Well, that sounds good, except for the fact that we got very specific information on central office, which is designed to quell a certain...
We did not. There was a whole sheet there. 6 positions were central office. You can go down the rest of this. It's not
and the rest of them in that sheet, which I counted as 2.3 million. But that doesn't get into the big number. And only alluding to the fact that we're going to continue to discuss. Okay, so we had meetings with the public, and their suggestions have been presented here.
Sure.
We've had surveys, and their suggestions have been presented here. But what, in 2 weeks, all of a sudden, all this information will be known. It's not known now, apparently, but it's going to be known, and then we get to see it for the first time and vote.
We will be continuing to amend the budget throughout the year, as we discussed when we adopted the previous budget. I would say in the past, 2 months between this and finding out a solution with the tax program, that's $5 million right there. The 6 months previous to that nothing was presented to us, and I never heard you complain once.
Well, actually, a complete program was presented to us a year ago, and we stopped it. And that would have eliminated...
From January until June of this year,
yet.
nothing was presented, and I never heard you say a word about that. So
I'm
I'm very curious what your complaint is now.
My complaint is now that we're not
Your
getting
complaint
into
is now
specifics.
that things aren't going the way you like them to, Mr. Hill.
No, listen.
And if you would like to be a productive member of this board, come and present ideas like we are.
Well, I have been presenting ideas, you haven't been listening.
What?
But
The idea
let's
with
look
weight
at,
committees?
let's look at what these people
Mr.
want to
Neal,
know. They
how
want
about
to
you
know
rejoin the finance
what
committee?
kind
If you
of,
have ideas about finance,
what
why do
kind
you
of
do the finance
deficit
committee?
reduction are we going to do?
If you have ideas about finance, I would like to publicly right now announce that I am inviting you to rejoin the finance committee. Mr. Neal, would you like to rejoin the finance committee?
I do not wish to participate in the finance committee because that's not where decisions are made. That's where we hear
That's
what
where
they're
questions
spending.
are asked. That's where questions are asked.
I'm
on a
asking
monthly
right now.
basis
You're
about the
saying
finance.
I have to be on the finance committee to ask a question.
There are six, every other member of the board here on our committees, giving up our time, helping get this information on a month-to-month basis, helping work with the administration. You're the only one that's not, but you have the most complaints out of anybody up here. So I would appreciate if you think you have so much to say, dig in like the rest of us are.
I have been. I've been providing my suggestions right here at this meeting.
Okay, but
And
what
I-
about the committees? Everybody else here serving on
I've
committees.
served that committee for 5 years.
And
5
your
years
term
on
is
that
not
committee.
up. Your term is
You've
not
only
up.
been here a couple of months. You have no idea what's been involved in this whole process.
And obviously neither do you, because you were on that committee when these issues came up. So
If
Mr.
you want to
Neal-
have a productive meeting,
Mr.
Mr.
Neal, I will once
President,
again
you
make
need
it
to change
publicly
your
known
dialogue.
that Mr. Neal serves on no committees when the rest of us do, and I'm publicly inviting you, rejoin the finance committee.
Okay, put me on.
Okay,
I'll listen.
there we go.
So,
Now, are you done with your diatribe? Let's get it going. Let's get some details. I want to find out what's going to
What
happen
ideas
before
do you have? What
the
can you
meeting.
contribute, Mr. Neal, instead of tearing down the work everybody else is doing?
so what, can I offer some clarity in my comment? So, I hear all of you. So, part of it, and I think maybe we just see this a little differently. So in August, I'll just use that example, right? Yes, the amended budget, but yes, we're also going to bring a recommendation to close the adult leisure program because the time is right? So I would ask at the August board meeting, you were going to be voting on some of these things. So this is a immediate, what we've done starting June 30th, right? Kind of like a do now at that time. And same with this, right? Do now and then we keep going. So I feel as though to bring some of these last month, I didn't have the adult leisure number. I didn't know the enrollment. I need all the facts before I'm going to bring something to you that says, here's all the facts, right? I can truly support closing this program because it's not a revenue generator. It's costing us money. It's not impacting our kids during the day. Yes, someone's going to get their job eliminated, right? Which is not a good conversation, not a conversation to have. But these is what starts to come in August, and it keeps building from there. Because if you say to me, okay, you want to close that program, why? I got to be able to answer why, right? So when we bring these, I'm going to say enrollment's low. Here's who signed up. Here's the staffing costs. Here's why it's not directly impacting all the kids during the day. And to go through each of these to do that, right? We have a lot of positions in grant funded. I left this vague intentionally tonight, right? These are people's jobs. So when I say the program's funded through grants, right, whether it's 31A, service learning, we look at that strategic plan, and then we say, truly, can we support this position in 2 years? So these, right, it might not be August, but I would want to have that conversation in August around the grants, so that if Jennifer is losing her job in June because the grant runs out, right, I do want board approval by September, October, and that gives that person time to either slide into another position or have time to find another job. But I'm also being very sensitive with this vague. I'm intentionally being vague. There's people in this room. I've been funded by a grant before, right? It's hard. But that, like every single month, I'll probably say to you on the agenda, here's what's coming. That's the only way I can explain it in how my brain works.
I think you've done a great job presenting all this information. You've done a lot of homework. What I was looking for is positions and numbers. Everybody, you know this board's been hit really hard with the idea there's going to be layoffs, and especially when you get specific. When do we know?
So maybe I need clarity. So when I bring another position, it's going to look just like this to you, right? So if I say recommendation for the elimination of these three positions that are funded by this grant, you will have a number. Because you actually have the within their structure, you could look up within my department who is grant funded. So you would already have an idea, it's in your mind of how much money is that. So it's a matter of, I would say, okay, here's what we're gonna recommend for these positions to you, you will have that number. Like these two positions might be, I don't know, $653,000, right? Or these are positions within this grant that is expiring and this is how much. To your point, some might be mid-year, because then that grant, then we can pull something else out of the general fund to put in that grant. So it's truly going to be ongoing. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Ryan, thank you for putting this together and also to the other presenters. This eliminated positions and cost savings sheet that we were looking at, yes, this one. What are the dates that this was done? Has this just been done since the 1st of June?
This is as of June 30th. So they've been eliminated.
How many of those had already been done by the 1st of June?
Nope, so all of these, I can tell you June is on your sheet. I know the principal coach was as of March of last year. And then I'm just going to use the supervisor, executive director of maintenance. That one, it was as of last February. The rest have been.
I know there were several APs that occurred at the beginning of the year that were moved around.
These are all as of June 30th. So they were still in their current role, so that they affect this budget. So even the executive director of maintenance, for example, right, it still becomes a savings for this year, because even though that person left in February or March, it's still a savings this year because you're not fulfilling that position.
Well, the reason for my question, it kind of piggybacks a little bit, I think, on what Mr. Neal was saying. The number is $14 million. That's the number. Because it was $8 million to get to zero, and we have to have more than zero, as you said. We have so when this first came up, I thought, okay, we have got basically we've got a year. We've got 52 weeks to affect a $14 million change. That's about $250,000 in cuts a week that are required. And so one of the things that hit me at the community meeting is hearing what people were talking about, I just don't know if everybody understands the depth, the scope of what needs to be done here. And today during this meeting, we said things like full disclosure, we're probably going to be looking at employees. Full disclosure, we are definitely going to be looking at employees. 91% of what this district spends is a human resource expense. So there's no way we're going to affect a $14 million outcome without impacting throughout. I would say that this is a great effort for the time, because it's in keeping with what was really called for by the severity of this problem. If we need to look at $1 million a month more, that's what we're going to have to be looking at. Now, under the previous leadership, I think that this very same program is what was being talked about. There's going to be a certain amount of attrition, and throughout the course of the 5 or 6 months throughout the summer, there's going to be people that we can eliminate. And so I have to think that this is, for lack of a better term, the low-hanging fruit. Everything else becomes a little bit more complicated. I mean, we're in the middle of negotiations and what have you, but it's still a valid question, I think, which is, if my numbers are right, and we're looking at about $250,000 a week, and we've already done this, and we're going to be hit with something in August, is it going to be at every meeting for the rest of the?
Yes. Yes. So,
I do want to clarify something though, because to your point there, yes, it was discussed previously, but looking at this contractual language, a lot of the things that we wish we could do now or we could have done now would have required notice before June 1st. And we didn't even have a meeting presenting the full-time fiscal situation until after that. So looking at the this language, a lot of positions that we would eliminate had to be notified by June 1st. And we weren't even given the full financial situation until, I think, June 20th. By then, it was too late to make some of those decisions.
Well, we could discuss why that happened, but that's not to do with one.
Right. But my point to that is that some of those decisions, that we are in a situation where some of the decisions we make will have to be a little more towards the end of the year and moving forward at that point. Some of them we can't make this month because of the contractual obligation.
Well, that answers my question, thank you.
Which that is just from summer, oh, yes, go ahead, Sarah.
So, I see your next step. So I want to know, are we, obviously decided regarding, okay, kind of move past that, no, but are we, excuse me, is the expectation at this meeting for us as a board to have a conversation at this point? Like if I'm looking at an organizational chart, right, and I want to say, for example, I'm looking at a particular department, I would like to see, I would like to have some conversation around some of the positions in the department.
Yes.
So I don't know, because again, the sensitivity, and I don't want to say department, I don't want to say position, because these are people, right? And so I want to be sensitive to that, but I also want to be in a place where we can start to have those conversations as we look at the board chart. So when does that take?
So that was happening right here.
Okay.
Right, so as you look through the department costs, as you look through the organizational chart, right, what do you notice, what do you wonder, and what do you want to share out?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there could be some conversation, like the same way in which there's some conversation taking place with special education around renaming some titles from directors to supervisors. Is that one thing we can do? Can we also look at downsizing the CIA department?
Kim, I didn't hear that last thing you said.
Could we look at downsizing the CIA department?
And to clarify, CIA includes CCR, special education, and curriculum and instruction. So it's kind of like a 3-department in one. So, yes, I can tell you that. And then yes, also too, and I'm glad Mr. Cox brought up too, also kind of that contractual language, right? So as even as we're reducing, you could reduce, which is different than an elimination, right? So as we look at it, and as a leadership team, we've already discussed some things in that space of who is doing the same job, what is the same redundancies, and I'm glad you lifted that because I know some of it as we bring it to the Board of Education, you're going to need to know why, right? And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this today too, is you look at the job descriptions, you're going to see the why in some of them, right? As you look at some of the jobs, you're going to truly say, well, they're doing the same thing, right? And that goes back to we can literally even support that when we come together as a team to say we're reducing this department because you're doing the same thing or you're doing similar work. Yeah. Is there any other departments too or structures that stand out to you as a board?
I think I want to follow up real quick, if I may. So when you talk about the recommendation of eliminate positions and programs from district grants, so yes, we have the binder and I can look and I can see what grants are expiring and what positions are under that grant, under those grants, but I don't know for certain that those will be ones that you are bringing. So is that something that you can send us prior to that?
Yes, I can do that, or I can even share too, one of the full, we said we're going to be honest, is we have some positions in 31A, and we have some positions in our service learning grant. Service learning grant does expire. Some of those positions at the end of the year, we can't sustain that funding. So within that, within the service learning grant, there are some of the positions within that CIA department that you spoke of.
You said 31A, so I'm one, you say 31A, but then I wonder is it 31AA?
So if you, let's just, because we have, you're going to see on your grant sheet both, which I'm glad you said. So go to your grant tab, the grant overview, and this will give you a good idea of what we have in 31A and 31AA
don't have an exact number that applies to us.
Right.
But as you know, a budget is an estimate
Right.
and it's constantly changing.
Right.
So I'm applying the same percentage to our situation that is being applied to the state.
Okay, and then one more point on the list, just because we're talking about 31AA. And so my understanding, and I want to say this because I want to make sure that everyone is aware, my understanding is that initially 31AA was funded at about $217 per pupil.
Yes.
And moving forward, it is now funded at $17. Right? So I think that's important to lift so that when we say that we're losing this grant, and then people see that, well, no, you still got the grant. We're not losing the grant. It's significantly. And I think that's important to lift.
And when you look at that, we meet our SROs, right? So that's a priority. When you look at, crossing guards, I'm not saying crossing guards aren't important, but I also discovered we have a contract, right? So there's all those little things that come into play and it's not a excuse by any means, but I myself am discovering too, right? Like, oh, we have a set contract, how long is that for, right? So just as you're probably feeling like too, right, new information, I'm in that same boat of, oh, okay, there is a contract, how long is that contract for, right? If you have a contract for a couple of years, you can't break it. So within that sense, it just gives you one idea of, okay, here's what's in 31A. If you move to the right and see what's in our service learning grant. Some of these positions and so forth are only funded through the end of the year. We have additional things that can go in the service learning grant in additional couple years, but we got to determine that too, right? What is going to be what are we saying within here we are going to sustain? Some of the behavior tax, you saw it on here tonight, we've already eliminated those positions, right? So I think it's an aha for all of us. If you're not living in this every day too, right, it might seem easy to just, hey, you know what, just cut $10 million and go. But it's not. It's contracts. It's not even that it's just people, but it's just the needs, the priorities, how the funding works, your contracts, like there's all of that messes with it.
And they too, we're always approving stuff, like, well, yeah, so it takes.
Ms. Curry, what I took out of what Mr. Cox said, obviously, this is not going to be done in a year. But to get to where we need to be, there are going to have to be much deeper cuts. And I know that's going to hurt, but the truth of it is, if we're going to get there, we're not going to have to, we shouldn't sit around for things to fall off. We're going to have to be very intentional about what's done.
So I don't think you wait for attrition and put that out there, right? I mean, hence why when you look at that elimination, right? We couldn't just wait to see if people were leaving and those positions up there. We made those decisions, right? We had truly said we're going to reduce an administrator at the secondary level. We're going to reduce an administrator over WIA, right? We're no longer going to, we're not going to fill that director position. I agree with you. I mean, you can't, like, people love this place. I love this place. People aren't going to leave, right? Not that we want them to, but we really have to go down to the, I don't know how else to say it. We can't just wait for them to go. It sounds horrible, but.
I have a question. So I'm going through my mind here. So
Yeah.
So looking at grants, looking at 23G, are we able to amend 23G? Because I've noticed in here, we have $277,000 in here for literacy supplies, but we also have a 35J grant.
Yes, and this was still as of May, right? So I should have brought that, this was where we left as in May, as you see those. So some of this has already been amended, yes. I'm glad you said that.
And then what is in 23G, director of test
School improvement, part of their salary.
Yeah.
Point two, it should say point two FTE.
Gotcha.
And some of it to consider too, right? way, which we've had those really hard conversations, is we have some significant positions, cost-wise in 31A, such as coaching, instructional coaching, right? So we have to come together as a team to truly say, okay, right? That's groups of people, right? And even though it's funded by a grant, right? We gotta really look at it, right? Are we gonna keep coaching? Are we gonna keep interventionists, right? What is a decision which has to happen pretty quickly, and then you move from there. Yeah, so it's a big decision. And as you know, right, you see it now, right? Just one position, and I think we've all lived through it. Depending on how people feel about it, right? Our perspective is, we want to be, we want to do everything from a fiscal standpoint, still have a great education for our students. Not everybody's going to agree, and it's going to be hard because people are losing their jobs.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm looking at, it seems like an easy fix, but I don't know. So the current properties, to sell, the ones that are so large, I know that's just like a short-term fix to bring our budget back to where it is. Aren't some of those worth almost what we're?
You would think they are, but they're not. That's why we're getting a broker to see what they can do.
Because I know properties have gone up so much.
If you look at some of the locations, that's why I wanted to be very clear that those properties have been sitting here for a long time before this issue with the financial issue. I think what it prompted was to start to look at brokering them out. The biggest obstacle that we have right now is only one of our, it's a good thing and a bad thing, because we're in a different situation. A lot of districts have vacant buildings that are still sitting on the properties. We really have one.
Right.
So we are going to use a broker to see, just like I told you, I think that property in Inkster, and I gotta go back with the properties in Inkster, we just were able to retain them because Inkster solved a problem with the state.
Right.
So really, we just got those back. So those are 3 of the, I think, 8 that I talked about today, and one being the one that is really a DNR protected property, which is the one right up here in the corner.
Okay.
So if you eliminate that and you add on to those 3 Inkster properties, then we're going to let the broker look at them and see what happens. I really think that social services or some type of a community center in that 17-acre parcel, if you've ever been by there, could be definitely a possibility.
Rather seems like it would be.
Housing for sure. Housing could change the whole dynamic of those properties, because if we do get interest rates and stuff to go down, I think you're going to see more builders interested in those properties.
Also, there's no houses to buy.
I agree.
But
But I don't think that's why I was glad that it came up and that we're now exploring those opportunities with properties. Like I said, are they going to solve our problem? No, but they get those properties off of our books, because right now we're cutting them. And even the one at Marshall, we're still heating, cooling that building. So it might not be a major proportion, but if we could pick up a couple $1 million in these properties, which is possible.
just seems like 17 acres would go for more than that.
Oh no, I'm just giving you an idea of what, a lot of those come in to play with the city too. When you sell a property, the city still has some say in what happens.
Right.
In regards to builders have to get the approval. It's a whole complicated, it's not, and that's why I wanted to say it's not as easy as you would think it would be. The only reason I know this is because I went through it in other places, and I typically would think, well, you got all this property, why don't you just put it up there, put it up for sale? It's not that easy, but is it possible? 100%.
And when are you dealing with the broker?
Yeah, we just met with the broker on Tuesday. We're going to give him the properties. We're not paying anything because it's like an attorney. If he sells it, he gets a percentage of that. So we're in a win-win situation. All we do is let him take a look at it. He puts it out to people throughout the state and even the country, for that matter, if it's a viable piece of property for them. So yeah, there's definitely possibilities.
Mr. Toko,
Yes.
I add on?
Yeah.
because we're the entity that we are, you know, many times people will stop by, like a church or individuals trying to buy it for $1.
Yeah.
Right.
The city.
You know, this thing of 17 acres, that should be worth this much, and really should be, and maybe to a private owner it would be. But we run into a lot of obstacles. For example, you can't put up a for sale sign, because then, you know, we're locked into selling it, and we don't want a charter school right in our belly.
What you don't want to happen, to piggyback on Dr. Weaver, some of these empty properties, if you guys are familiar with some of the charter schools, they won't even they won't even erect a building. What they do is put portables. So all they do is lay a concrete slab and they throw 4 portables out there, and they take 200 of your kids real quick in a year. Then next year it's 400 kids, and they put 2 more portables up. If you watch the evolution of like Summit Academy and so on, they started with portables, and then they got enough kids, they erected a building. So we've got to be very, very cautious and careful about how we sell, and put certain things in the deed that say that we have to approve. Not to say that Scott Togo Incorporated couldn't buy that property, sit on it for 2 years, and then sell it to a charter. That can happen too.
Right.
But we got to be very cautious and careful on the decisions we make with properties and any vacant building, because we don't want short-term decisions to be catastrophic long-term decisions made by short-term people too. So that's another thing that I've seen happen in districts where someone comes in, they sell 4 or 5 buildings, what do they care? So that's where we're at with it.
But the brokers.
Yes, and we're going to give him the properties. Now that we know we got the Inkster properties back in our possession, it's a little bit easier to deal with those 3.
And just like Mr. Coco said, you know, we have to come out of the building, we don't have a billion, you know, so that's another thing too, it costs us to get rid of them unless other people want to take on, you know, because the amount probably not, but, you know, that's debt.
Yeah. And to give you some credit, the broker that we're talking to.
We could have a game, sledgehammers.
We could.
Get all your frustration, take building down.
One thing that I've brought up a few times over the years is, if colleges get state money just like we do and are able to charge their students over above that, and then colleges can start a charter school for profit, why couldn't we do something unique in our district and do like a school of music as a charter run by the district? And what I mean by that is the math and everything is embedded in what we teach.
Dr. Weaver,
For that.
and I can speak to that. Detroit has charters all over the district.
Yes.
Ypsilanti has charters in their district, and I think Ms. May knows that. They do that. The key is, are you going to make that fiscally responsible decision in regards to, do you have the need for it, first of all? Is there a need for it even outside your district? With school choice right now, if you came up with something unique, which to be honest with you, we have a very unique building with our Innovative Academy, because we offer a hybrid schedule that really, it's almost unheard of right now in education. I think we can do a better job in that space and can grow that space. That's just one of the things. That would be similar to what you're talking about, would be a charter with some type of innovative program that is different, that would attract kids.
So to piggyback off of that, even within our career tech center, being really thoughtful about some of the things that are becoming popular. And I know Ms. Samara was once the principal over there, was thinking about things that would attract kids, the different offerings that we provide them, because that would be another opportunity to draw students to the district. So we do have spaces where we can come up with the creative offerings that might focus on
Be attractive to others.
Well, I was speaking in terms of actually creating a charter, which seems to pull kids big time. If it was something unique, like music, or something like that.
But once you create the
really get
charter,
kids.
what you have to understand is the entity that creates the charter will recoup most of the FTE, if not all of it.
Right?
So
Now,
that's-
be us.
No, because we would have difficulty because charters, right now, it's hard to get a charter through districts in regards to like, Detroit got the charters through districts, but they did it through like Wayne State and so on. So what people don't understand is the charters in Detroit, the money, the FTE is going to Wayne State because they own the charter. They're using Detroit's buildings and you take a lot of Detroit's kids, but we have to be careful with that. Because a charter steps outside of the public school entity. So
Which is exactly my point,
Yeah.
because it can be a for-profit thing.
but it's going to come through a university. Most of the charters aren't given to the public schools because they don't want to lose kids in that space.
All right, is the state precluding us? Is there a law against it?
Is there, I can't speak to that. I'm just going based on what I know previous districts have done and how, when you do see a charter in a district, it's typical, well, it's 99, 100% usually run by the university that's associated with that district. Like Ypsi Public Schools has charters through Eastern Michigan, Concordia College. You see a lot of them in Detroit where there's a charter, but that charter is being run by the university, so the university is collecting the FTE for that.
And the reason.
All of it or half of it?
You have to have a management company,
K-12 public
and the
education.
universities are the management company.
Yep.
Like, we wouldn't be the management
Correct.
company. Our name may be attached to it, but we would not be the management company, meaning we wouldn't get the money.
We
Because
wouldn't get any.
K-12 public education is by definition nonprofit.
Yep.
So
Charter's
we would not
profit.
be allowed to legally run a for-profit school.
But why you do see them in districts because of that, is the university's running them.
I don't know. Just, I'm done next time. So I would also like, to have a review of the HR chart, just thinking about the fact of, if we're looking at, we're cutting a number of positions, and in cutting a number of positions, you may not need as much, administration, thank you, in the HR department, right? You don't have to be an employee. So I'm just looking at the org chart and I'm throwing out things that I want to look at. So then it's not as important or difficult conversations. I'm not pinpointing, attacking anyone. I'm just trying to look at the org chart, look at the decisions that we're talking about, what we need to do, and some ways that we can do it. And then also, I don't know what it would take, because I know executive directors are they in the same union as directors?
Yes.
Okay, so can we look at those type of changes as well?
So you could like to mean, like say like the levels that we're at in our work, so like if there could be a reduction or elimination,
Yeah, so
or
just like you're talking
executive
about
director to
reducing
director.
or changing titles, so that would be a salary reduction for special ed, looking at that problem.
Yeah, the executive director and then directors under them and stuff, get rid of the top and, with that title. So that we don't have to pay more money.
That was a question that I put down, wrote down as soon as I started looking through my binder today, because it is so much of a considerable amount of information. I was thinking that maybe we could have a continuing, sheet line, spreadsheet where we can ask questions or something, because this is, and I mean, we
citizens comment down agenda items. Do I have anybody who wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, next item on the agenda is 121.25. Mr. Gray, do you have any additional comments? Or?
Not as I said a lot tonight, but thank you for coming.
Thank you. The next item is 122.25, review recommendations, Board of Education. Do you want to do anything?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to reiterate. I've explained it, but my concern is that we do come up with a plan that does more than just bring it back to zero. I know the state's going to require us to do that at some point, but I know that we have a lot more to do than what I've seen on the board so far. We've done a great job of putting the information together. I wish we weren't getting the final shoe dropping at the meeting next time, because it puts us in a really funny position of voting on something that maybe we don't know the full story on yet, as far as the other millions that have to be cut. So with that, I'll wait to see what happens. Thank you.
Just a good point of clarification. The amended budget is just going to be an amended budget of where we're at now, right? It's not going to be it's still going to be a deficit budget, right? Yeah, this isn't the other shoe. This is just amending based on the new state budget.
We're not doing anything to reduce our deficit.
Well, we are. These steps that she's going to amend it as we go.
That's 2 million. But
Well,
what happens to the other 8 some million?
It's 2 million plus the 2.5 million that we're not having to have to pay this year for the payback for the taxes. So it's about 5 million there. And then we're going to amend it throughout the year as more and more cuts take place. We're not getting the budget without knowing where it's coming from this month. We're getting the amended budget based on the state budget and the changes on that and the changes that are already been.
So we're not doing anything to be, we're not looking forward to trying to reduce our budget. We're just going to pick at it a little bite at a time. That's what you're saying. I mean, 2 million, 2 point, whatever it was, 2 point something million, 2.8 million.
So it's your opinion that we should come with a final plan to present before a budget of everything that's being budgeted?
Well, I think that's what employees would like.
Do you think a superintendent, when presenting a plan before the budget, should present the final plan with everything that's being cut?
I think that everyone has been asking for a long time, Mr. President.
I'm just
long time, they've been asking, what are we going to do? We put it off a year ago. We've been sitting around not doing all that much. Now we're talking about it. I see progress. But my question is, we're going to start a new school year. Are we then going to continue to ride that deficit, or are we going to do something to reduce the deficit? More than the 2.8 million.
And I believe it's been made clear that this is going to be an ongoing process. This has been said in every meeting. This is going to be an ongoing process. This is not something you're finding out tonight. This is something.
No, I am finding this out tonight. Finding out that we don't intend to address the entire problem. I mean, it's against the law to adopt a deficit budget. We did it anyway.
Which is not true, but
well, it is.
You can say whatever you want, but that doesn't make it true.
Mr. President, let me finish. You did call on me to speak. I know you don't like me to speak, but let me finish.
I don't like you giving legal advice.
No, well, I read the law. Whether you be an attorney or not, the law says you shall not adopt. That shall means you can't do it, right? But then it goes on to say, but if you do, you have to come up with a plan within 30 days, which is long past. Now we're coming up with a plan, but the plan is only nipping at little pieces of it. We're not addressing the big picture.
Man, if you had brought these concerns up in the previous administration, I'd be begging you to run for re-election right now.
Well, it's nice of you to say that, but I think what I saw, if you want to hear the whole explanation, what I saw was when that was presented, this board shot that plan down and sat on their thumb all this time. It was your obligation to work with Mr. Dignan to get something moving.
John Dignan for this information probably 30 times. No, you don't want to talk about what's true. You just want to continue to lie to this community.
about what really happened. Nobody sat on their thumbs. I was in meetings every week with John Dignan, asking him for this information.
You're wrong about that.
Really? I'm wrong about the fact that I've been asking for information like this from
So
John
you guys
Dignan?
all asked for information, but you didn't work on a plan. All you did was
How
kept
could I
saying,
work on a
no,
plan
no, no.
without the information?
We had study session on top of study session.
When was our last study
Gave us-
session? When was our study session after study session? It was in December. It was in December. And after that, I asked for this
You're
information
fooling these
right
people.
here.
If you're telling them you didn't have study sessions, we had tons.
Mark Neal, you are a liar.
Well, that's
You
not
are
very-
a liar.
That's not very nice of you.
Point of order, this is
Not very nice of you.
a time.
I'm not trying to be nice. I'm trying to
Well,
tell
I
the
can
truth to
see
the
that.
community,
I
and
can
it's
see
something
that
you
you're
haven't done.
You're not a very nice person.
This is the time when board members are to speak and we move on.
Yeah, that was my speaking time, in which she interrupted, which she does often.
Boo-hoo,
And when I
Mark.
closed it-
Boo-hoo, I interrupt your lies. Because somebody's finally calling you on it.
Oh, Michael, how childish can you be? What an idiot.
If part of me, like, I'm just a teacher, like, through and through, so I'm just gonna say we pause, and then just, the goal is to move forward, so I'm just gonna say we just, like, take a breath, right, and then.
Mr. Cox.
To file with the state of Michigan. Well, let me first say, a few meetings ago, 2 or 3 meetings ago, at the end of the meeting towards comments, I said that I'm going to try to lower my emotions so that we can work together. Obviously, we have important things, and we have many professionals willing to help us. And even though I feel strongly about many things, I thought, well, what's most important is on August 27th, the kids are coming back to school. And we've got to be ready for it. And all of these things have to be done. I'm going to continue to try to do that. And I'd like everybody to do that, including Mr. Chairman, yourself. With respect to filing a budget that has a deficit in it in violation of the state law is a serious matter. And what we found out tonight is that many members of the Board of Education and even the administration didn't know that that was going to preclude all conversations that had happened previously. And now we're in a deficit elimination plan situation, which, as you could see by the thing that was put up on the board, it's very detailed. And I think the thing that I've been concerned about, and I assume Mark's been concerned about, is we need to make progress towards this deficit. And I think it now has, even though it's been silently taken out of our hands, it has been taken out of our hands. The fact now is that the state wants to look at everything we're doing every single month. That alone, it's like having a police officer follow you every day. You're not going to make a lot of mistakes, or at least you're going to be focused on what you should be focused on. So it is going to be incumbent upon us to file paperwork that's going to let the state say, okay, they've got a problem, they know they have a problem, and they're working through it. They're moving in the right direction. That's what they're going to want to see. Filing, telling them that we've decided we're going to run a deficit of $8 million, that is not in, even though it might have been factual and accurate, that is not the right direction. That is not what they wanted to see. So now, the concern that the community might have, that board members, even myself might have, about not meeting these qualifications, pretty much been taken off. The state's not going to allow it. And rest assured, if we don't maintain our course to a solution, there's going to be other things that we don't anticipate they're going to do that they're going to do. And I think it's very important for our community, for our school district, for our parents, for them to see that even though we have a problem, we're effectively working through that problem. That's what they're going to be looking for. I think that's what the community will be looking for too. So thank you.
Ms. Abby Mitchell?
I just want
he gave you the wrong information, or they left a piece of information off. Because when you got your paperwork, they was like, oh, they have to go to these people. It happens. But our CFO is working hard, we approved it, and we need to move forward. And this binder right here is what's gonna get us to move forward, because we have information that we never had before. And we can come to board meeting and understand why these jobs have to be eliminated and why these people get to stay. We can understand that the teachers get a 30-day notice before they laid off. And the transportation get a 20-day notice. So we can understand that, but before we have begged for this information. So I just say to you guys, let's move forward. We have a team here that has showed us in the last 2 months that they're willing to work with us, they're willing to be transparent, and I don't know about you guys, but anything that I have asked this team in the last month for, I have been able to get. And that didn't happen before. We can't go back, we can only go forward. I want our students, our teachers, when they come to school on August 27th, the day before my birthday, I want them to be able to come to school and have a good time, see they classmates, see their teacher, and not worry about if their teacher gonna be there for Christmas. And how we do that, we work with the team, and the team be transparent with us. We work with our students, we work with our community, we work with our teachers. That's it. Just going back and forth with each other is not gonna get it. We don't have to get along, we just have to work together. So that's all I ask.
Ms. May?
I just want to say thank you for this evening. Thank you for the information, the binder. I really appreciate having the opportunity to have dialogue, to ask questions, to make suggestions. I think this was a productive board workshop. Just in hearing the things that you all are doing, what you're thinking about doing, being able to give you some suggestions to go back and look at, allowing the board to have the input that we're supposed to have, right? So I want to say thank you for that, and I just want to thank everyone that came out tonight to be a part of the discussion. It felt really nice to do this as a community, and I'm looking forward to just moving forward.
Fine.
So I'd like to say thank you so much. I want to give you all hugs. This is amazing. I've been asking for this information, even with the org chart, like you said, I got to be able to see it. Everybody, Ms. Julie, Ms. Philly, Ms. Curry, I just really appreciate all the information that you're giving. I'd like to say you guys got more people to come to the community conversation than we did when we had the box in 2018. I understand. is all, it's like interest only school, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to help. And then I have friends of legislators that I talk to all the time, just like Hertzberg in Kevin, you know, they know how to get us money. The Senator Pahecki, Congressman Rashid Tlaib, they have money, even they have a different project, community funded project, $2.5 million you can give. They can build some of one of our properties with the money from Congress. There's money out there. So I just want to put out there, I'm just excited about the direction. I feel happy. We're going to do great. We're going to work together. Again, thank you so much. This is a lot of work. You guys did a lot of work, and we appreciate that. So I thank you all.
Dr. Weaver? Yeah. As been said, thank you to the team for presenting, putting this together. I just want to say that after hearing some differing point of views tonight, that some things come to you as a blessing in disguise. And maybe this MDE thing, you know, maybe we just need them to come in and look at everything and give us their suggestions as to, okay, this is how we think you ought to climb out of this, and in effect force us to make decisions that maybe we're not comfortable with. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to echo thanking everybody for all the work that went into this. This is a lot of information. This is, you know, we've had lots of conversations with Gary leading up to this, and I still didn't expect this much information, and that's been really great. And yeah, I do know there's still work to be done. I do echo what Mr. Neal and Brock said, that we don't want to end at zero. We want to end with a healthy fund balance again. However, you know, we were looking at -11 at one point, then -8, and now, you know, between this and the property tax deal we worked out, spreading that over 4 years, that's another $5 million, you know. Just to get zero, we're getting there, we're pretty close. And, you know, 2 more months of decisions like this and we'd be at zero. But again, we don't want to stop there. We do want to get ourselves to a positive fund balance. But thank you for all the work you've done putting into this. And I want to thank the members of the community that came out tonight. This is a very good turnout for a workshop. We normally don't have anywhere near this many people at our workshops. I usually have 2, I would say. But thank you all for showing up tonight and giving your opinions as well. We'll find out more on the 19th at that meeting, but again, this is going to be a continuing process. Every month we're going to be making more progress towards it. I do want to clarify that, you know, we don't need to do, you know, I would love to clear $14 million off the books in 1 year. I think that would be amazing. However, you know, we are not going to go under state control if we don't eliminate the deficit in 1 year. As everybody saw, the deficit elimination plan had a whole lot of columns on there that it's not expected that we can do it in 1 year. That being said, I don't think we should wait. We should do it as quick as we can. We should do it, make the changes we need to make so that we can start right-sizing right away. And with that, last time on the agenda is 123.25, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Support.